one thing that's important, and I think the youngsters are really going to love this, is that, electric vehicles are just very simple. In a normal car, the cars that we drive every day on the road, they're about 1,700 moving parts. 1,700 moving parts. In an electric vehicle, wild guess, just 20. It's a very, very simple thing. It's complicated because it does the same work. But in terms of its organization, it's very simple. Because it's simple, it's very efficient. A fossil fuel vehicle is about 25% efficient, which means that 75% of the fuel that you burn doesn't go in propelling the vehicle forward. This is a hard fact.
Am I looking at a possibility that 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, we have the 100 most polluted cities in the world in our country? Will this number become less? Will Delhi ever face a situation where we have clean air days?
The problem is really grave, and we need to be on a war footing to be able to address that problem. I think the most fundamental thing in our country is the realization of this problem. 1.2 million people die every year in this country because of poor air quality, 25% of which is attributed to road transport, which means 3 lakh people die every year in this country because of the vehicles you and I are driving. This is an undisputed statistics. 14 of the top 15 worst polluted cities of the world are in India. 10,000 people died because of the COVID pandemic. There was a national lockdown. 3 lakh people die every year because of poor air quality. We do not discuss this on page 17 of the newspaper, right? Things have to be done on a war footing, and this is exactly what my company, Altigreen, company that had started back in 2013, started looking at. But we realized that the technology has to be built for our geography. It's very clear that the needs of our geography, which is India and the emerging markets of South Asia, Africa, South America, the needs are very different. Whether you look at environmental concerns, whether you look at unprofessional driving behaviors, whether you look at the road infrastructure, whichever way you look at it, these are realities. And 130-year-old diesel fossil fuel technology has made it here. So when we look at making electric vehicles in this country, we need to make sure that they are vehicles that can compete against, at the same platform, against a fossil fuel vehicle. Only then can we expect their accelerated adoption. And we've also realized that we are not in the transportation business, we are in the peace of mind business.
I noticed that you've developed a technology called HyPix, which can be basically installed on petrol and diesel cars. And I'm told it can save 9 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So not only are you solving the pollution problem, you're perhaps also solving the climate problem. Interestingly, it says by 2029. So that's like 8 years away. So how is this going to be possible?
Yeah, so, fossil fuels have been around for a long time, and they came in for a specific reason. But when you look at the future, it's clear that every person in the automobile industry has to start thinking otherwise. There are enough countries who've come down with regulation. Government of India came down with regulations to say we will not have BS5. We moved directly from the emission standard BS4 directly to BS6. And the government meant that they would implement it. It doesn't matter whether there's a pandemic or no pandemic. So it's clear that we have to move away from fossil fuel. I guess question is, why not CNG? Why not LPG? Why not biodiesel? Why not the others, right? Why electricity? And one thing that always comes in people's mind is, yeah, electricity is also coming from coal grids, boss. So you're just shifting the problem from one place to another. To a certain extent, that is true. However, if you look at the mandates of the government and how much we are pushing towards renewable sources of electricity, I mean, when we started back in 2011, 2012, then 91% of India's electricity was coming from coal grids. Today, the number is in the 70s. So there's a lot being done to make sure that we can move away from that. Number one. Number two, most of the people who are dying today are not dying at places where electricity is being generated. Most of them are dying in overpopulated cities. So the only way to make this happen is that at least where this population of these vehicles is so dense, that's where we need to clean it. And technologies like electric vehicles. So one thing that's important, and I think the youngsters are really going to love this, is that electric vehicles are just very simple. In a normal car, the cars that we drive every day on the road, they're about 1,700 moving parts. 1,700 moving parts. In an electric vehicle, wild guess, just 20. It's a very, very simple thing. It's complicated because it does the same work. But in terms of its organization, it's very simple. Because it's simple, it's very efficient. A fossil fuel vehicle is about 25% efficient, which means that 75% of the fuel that you burn doesn't go in propelling the vehicle forward. This is a hard fact. Electric vehicles are 90% efficient. And hence the usage of the energy towards transportation or mobility is much higher. It's an order of magnitude higher, which is where we want to be. And that's how the technology that we've built allows us to do that. And I know that all electric vehicles and the push from the government of India is forcing us to move more and more in that direction. I think you'll actually start seeing a lot of movement in that direction. The segments of the automobile industry will change. I think that to me is the most important thing. Instead of focusing on a segment that might adopt much later in the future, we should go after those segments that are more akin to adoption of electric vehicles. I think that would be key.
This at a time, as we remind ourselves, we are in the midst of a global pandemic. There is a slowdown with industry, and yet you remain optimistic that we have the technology, we have the solutions to scale down some of our environmental problems.
Crystal gaze into the near future with our series Be Inspired, that takes you into the world of AI, medicine, space, good governance, economy, and so much more. Subscribe to our channel now.